It was just after sunset when I saw her. Standing by the lake behind our house, my daughter-in-law, Emily, looked like a shadow against the fading light. Her long coat fluttered in the wind, and her hands gripped something heavy, something I couldn't quite make out at first. Then I saw it. A suitcase. Dark brown, old, and soaked around the edges as if it had already been dragged through mud. I froze. She didn't notice me. She was too focused on what she was doing. Emily glanced around once, twice, and then, without hesitation, she threw the suitcase into the lake. It hit the water with a deep thud, sinking fast as ripples spread across the surface. She stood there, breathing hard, eyes locked on the dark water until the ripples faded. Then she turned and walked away as if nothing had happened. I stood behind the trees, heart pounding. Why would she throw something like that into the lake at this hour? The beginning of doubt. Emily had always been quiet, polite, almost too perfect. My son, Daniel, adored her. They'd been married for 2 years, and until that night, I'd never had a single reason to doubt her. But after seeing that, something changed. When she came inside, her hands were trembling slightly. She poured herself a glass of water and avoided eye contact. "Everything okay, Emily?" I asked casually. "Yes, Dad," she replied, forcing a smile. "Just went out for some air." Her voice was steady, but her eyes, those eyes, looked haunted. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing the image of the suitcase sinking into the cold, black water. I told myself it could be nothing. Maybe it was trash. Maybe she was just cleaning up. But deep down, I knew better. There was something wrong. The lake calls back. The next morning, I woke before sunrise and walked to the lake. The air was thick with fog, and the water looked almost silver under the dim light. I stared at the surface, trying to guess where the suitcase had gone down. Then, I saw a corner of fabric floating near the reeds. It was faint, but it was there. I waded in, ignoring the cold, and pulled at it. It wasn't fabric, it was part of the suitcase lining. Torn, like something had burst from the inside. That's when fear settled into my chest. What was inside that suitcase? The lies begin. Later that day, Daniel and Emily joined me for breakfast. Daniel was cheerful as usual, scrolling through his phone, while Emily kept quiet. Her eyes darted toward me once, as if testing whether I knew something. "So," I asked casually, "did you sleep well?" Emily nodded. Yeah, fine. Go anywhere last night?" I continued. Her spoon froze midair. Daniel looked up. "Last night? No, Dad, we were both home." "Why?" I forced a smile. "No reason. Just asking." Emily's face turned pale. She didn't speak for the rest of breakfast. That silence told me everything I needed to know. The search. When they left for work, I returned to the lake with a long stick and some rope. I tied the rope around my wrist and started poking at the bottom of the shallow end. It took nearly an hour, but finally, I hit something solid. It was the suitcase. The handle brushed against my fingers as I pulled it closer. The water smelled of rust and decay. I dragged the suitcase to the shore, my hands trembling. It was heavier than I expected. The locks were old but rusted enough to break with a few hits from a rock. I hesitated. What if it was something innocent? What if I was about to ruin my son's marriage over a misunderstanding? But then again, why would she hide it like that? I opened the suitcase, and what I saw inside froze my blood. The horrifying discovery. Inside was a wedding dress. White once, but now stained and torn. Wrapped around it was a bundle of old photographs, pictures of Emily, much younger, smiling beside a man I didn't recognize. And then, under the dress, was a box. A small, wooden box carved with initials, E&M. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were letters, dozens of them, each one addressed to Emily. The handwriting was desperate, emotional, obsessed. Greater than, "You can't just walk away, Emily. You promised me forever. If I can't have you, no one will. Meet me by the lake, one last time." The last letter had a dark red stain across the paper. The man in the photographs. I spread the photos across the ground. The man beside her looked familiar somehow. Dark hair, gray eyes, confident smile. And then it hit me. He was Mark Preston, a man who had gone missing 3 years ago from a nearby town. I remembered his face from the news. They'd said he disappeared after a breakup with his girlfriend, who was never found. Emily. I dropped the letters, my heart racing. Could it be possible? Could the woman my son married have been involved in that? The confrontation. That night, I couldn't keep it in anymore. When Daniel went upstairs, I called Emily into the living room. She looked nervous, her fingers playing with the edge of her sleeve. Emily, I said quietly, I went to the lake today. She froze. I found something, I continued. A suitcase. Her face drained of color. You went there. Yes, I said, standing up slowly. And I saw what you tried to hide. Tears welled in her eyes. You don't understand, she whispered. It's not what you think. Then tell me, I demanded. Tell me why that man's pictures were there. Tell me why you had his letters, his. Because he wouldn't leave me alone. She cried, her voice cracked, raw with emotion. Mark was dangerous. He hurt me. He followed me everywhere. The police didn't believe me, so I ran. I had to disappear. When I met Daniel, I thought it was finally over. She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. Truth or lies? For a moment, I almost believed her. But something didn't add up. Then why hide it now? I asked. Why throw the suitcase away? Because someone found me again, she whispered. 2 nights ago, I got a letter. No name, just 5 words. I know what you did. My heart stopped. I took the letter from her trembling hands. The handwriting was the same as Mark's. But Mark is dead, I said quietly. Isn't he? Emily didn't answer. She just stared out the window toward the lake, where the fog was rolling in again like ghosts from the past. The night air was heavy, almost electric, as I watched her from the window. Emily stood near the edge of the lake again, only this time, she wasn't throwing the suitcase in. She was staring at it. A cold dread ran down my spine. What could possibly be inside this one? I stepped outside quietly, the wooden porch creaking beneath my feet. The wind brushed past my face, carrying the faint scent of rain and mud. Emily didn't turn around when I approached. Emily, I said softly. What are you doing out here? She froze but didn't look at me. Her voice trembled. You shouldn't be here, Dad. Why not? I took another step closer. What's in that suitcase? She finally turned her head, her eyes glistening under the moonlight. Something you should have told me a long time ago. The name in the dark. Her words hit me like a blow. What are you talking about? I asked. She crouched beside the suitcase and slowly unzipped it. I expected the same old horror, letters, photos, blood-stained reminders of her past. But what I saw inside this time stopped me cold. There were documents, old, yellowed papers tied with string, and on top of them was a photo. Of me, younger, standing beside a man with gray eyes and a confident smile. Mark Preston, the missing man. I stumbled back. What is this? Emily's face was pale, her lips trembling. You knew him? No, I said quickly, shaking my head. That's not possible. She pulled out another photo, this one taken in front of a cabin near the lake. There I was again, this time standing with my arm around Mark's shoulder. We looked like friends, brothers, even. I found these, Emily said, her voice cracking, in the attic 2 days ago. You and Mark, you worked together, didn't you? I swallowed hard, my pulse pounding in my ears. The past I had buried years ago was clawing its way back to the surface. Buried secrets. 20 years ago, before my wife died, I ran a small construction business in town. Mark Preston had been one of my best workers, smart, charming, and ambitious. But he wasn't what he seemed. He was obsessed with power, with money, with control. And he had a way of making people disappear when they got in his way. I tried to expose him once. I failed. Emily, I whispered, you don't understand. I didn't know he was still alive when you met him. She shook her head. Don't lie to me. These letters, she pulled a handful of folded pages from the suitcase, are all from you. You wrote to him. I snatched one, heart racing. My handwriting, my signature, but I didn't remember writing them. The letter read, greater than, meet me at the lake. We need to finish what we started. Greater than, if Emily finds out, everything will fall apart. I dropped the paper, my hands trembling. It wasn't possible. I hadn't seen Mark in years before he vanished. Someone forged these, I muttered. They're not mine. Emily stared at me, tears filling her eyes. Then why is your name on his missing person report? I froze. The missing report. I grabbed the papers from her hands. There it was, official police documentation from 3 years ago. The report listed me as one of the last known contacts of Mark Preston. Witness: Jonathan Hale. Last seen near Lake Evers. That was my name. I remember the night they'd come to question me. I'd told them I didn't know where Mark was. That we hadn't spoken in years. They'd believed me. Or at least, I thought they had. But now Emily stood here, holding proof that tied me directly to the man she claimed had ruined her life. Why didn't you tell us? She whispered. Why didn't you tell Daniel? Because, I said quietly, some things are better left buried. Shadows from the past. Emily backed away from me. You lied. All this time, you made me think I was the one with secrets. But it was you. Listen to me, I said, trying to steady my voice. Mark wasn't who you think he was. He hurt people, used them. He wanted you for a reason. Her eyes widened. What reason? I hesitated. The truth tasted like poison in my mouth. Because you weren't the first, I said finally. You were just like your mother. She blinked, confused. My mother. I nodded slowly. He was with her once. Before you were even born. He destroyed her. And when she died, he came after me. Said I owed him. That's why I warned the police. That's why I tried to stop him. Emily stared at me in disbelief, tears streaking her cheeks. You knew my mother. I tried to help her, I said. But I was too late. The blood in the water. The suitcase was still open, its contents glistening under the weak moonlight. Beneath the papers, something metallic caught my eye, a knife, rusted and dark. Emily's voice broke. Do you recognize that? I stared at it, my heart turning to ice. Yes, I recognized it. It was mine. My initials were carved into the handle. I'd lost it years ago, the night Mark disappeared. Where did you get this? I whispered. Emily's expression hardened. It was inside the first suitcase. I didn't show you because I wanted to see your reaction. I stepped back, shaking my head. No, Emily, it's not what you think. But it didn't matter. She'd already made up her mind. Daniel's return. Just then, headlights flashed through the trees. Daniel's car pulled into the driveway. Emily quickly zipped the suitcase and kicked it aside. Don't say a word, she hissed. Not yet. Daniel stepped out, smiling. What are you two doing out here? It's freezing. I forced a weak laugh. Just some old memories by the lake. Emily put on her sweetest smile. Yeah, Dad was just telling me stories from before you were born. She kissed Daniel on the cheek and whispered something I couldn't hear. But the look she gave me, cold, sharp, deliberate, sent a chill through my chest. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I kept thinking about the knife, the letters, the photo. How could everything circle back to me? Was it all some cruel setup, or had I really done something I couldn't remember? Voices in the dark. At 3 a.m., I heard footsteps outside my door. I opened it slightly and saw Emily standing in the hallway, holding the suitcase. Where are you going? I whispered. She didn't answer. She just looked at me with tear-streaked eyes and said, You should have told me the truth, Jonathan. Then she walked out the front door and vanished into the fog. I ran after her, but when I reached the lake, she was gone. The water rippled softly, and the suitcase, her suitcase, was nowhere to be seen. I shouted her name until my voice broke, but the night swallowed every word. The hidden tape. The next morning, I went to her room. It was empty, perfectly clean, except for one thing left on the dresser, a small cassette tape with my name written on it, for Jonathan. My hands shook as I found an old tape player and pressed play. Emily's voice came through, trembling and low. Greater than, if you're hearing this, it means you've found the truth. You and Mark, you both lied to me. You both took something from me that I can never get back. My mother's life, my peace, my past. I found out everything. Greater than, but don't worry, Dad, I've gone to fix it. I'll make sure Mark's story finally ends where it began, in the lake. The tape clicked off. I dropped it, heart pounding. If she'd gone back to the lake, it meant she believed Mark was still out there. But how? He'd been missing for years. Unless, he wasn't. The return. That night, as thunder rolled across the sky. I went back to the lake one last time. The water was restless, waves crashing against the shore. Lightning flashed, and for a brief second, I saw a silhouette near the water. A man. He turned toward me. His eyes gleamed in the stormlight. "Hello, Jonathan," he said. "It's been a long time." Mark Preston was alive, and he was holding Emily's suitcase. Lightning split the sky as I stared at the figure standing by the lake. It was him, Mark Preston, alive, soaked from the rain, holding Emily's suitcase in his hand. My breath caught in my chest. For a moment, I couldn't move. Then he smiled, that same smile I remembered from years ago, charming, confident, and absolutely cold. "You look like you've seen a ghost, Jonathan," he said, stepping closer. I could barely hear him over the thunder. "You're supposed to be dead." Mark shrugged. "Everyone thought I was. That's what I wanted." He looked around, scanning the trees and the water, then smirked. "Where's Emily?" The question made my blood run cold. "She's not here," I said. "What do you want from her?" He tilted his head. "The truth. The same thing you've always hidden. Dash dash dash. The past resurfaces." I took a step toward him. "You've done enough damage. Leave her alone." Mark laughed, a dry, bitter sound swallowed by the rain. "Damage? You talk about damage like you weren't part of it. You told me to disappear, remember? I told you to leave her alone." I snapped. He dropped the suitcase onto the wet ground. The impact echoed like a gunshot. "You always acted like the hero, Jonathan. But you and I, we're not so different." He kicked open the suitcase. Inside were old photos, papers, a few broken trinkets, and something wrapped in plastic. He tore it open and threw it toward me. It was a wedding photo. Emily in her white dress, and beside her, not Daniel, but Mark. I stared at it, the wind whipping rain into my eyes. "No, that's impossible. She doesn't remember," he said quietly. "I made sure of that. Dash dash dash. Emily returns." A voice behind us cut through the storm. "Stop lying, Mark." Emily stood on the hill above the lake, her coat clinging to her body, her hair plastered to her face. She looked broken, yet stronger than I'd ever seen her. She started walking down slowly, her steps firm despite the mud. Mark turned to her, almost smiling. "I was wondering when you'd show up." Emily's eyes burned with fury. "You faked everything. The letters, the photos, everything. You made me think my life was a lie." He stepped closer, his tone suddenly soft. "Because it was, sweetheart. You were never supposed to find him." He pointed at me. "He's the reason your mother died." Her breath hitched. "Don't tell her, Jonathan," Mark said, his voice rising above the thunder. "Tell her what you did to her mother." Dash dash dash. The burden of guilt. My knees weakened. The world spun around me. "Emily," I whispered, "there are things you don't know, things I've hidden for years." She stared at me, tears mingling with the rain. "Then tell me now. All of it." I looked at Mark, then back at her. "Your mother, Clara, she wasn't just a victim. She was part of what Mark did. She helped him scam people, take their money, their land. When she tried to leave him, he came after her. I tried to stop him. There was a fight." The sound of rain drowned my words. She fell, hit her head. I called for help, but he ran. "I buried the truth because I wanted to protect you. I didn't want you to grow up knowing what kind of man he was." Emily's face twisted in grief. "And what kind of man are you?" I swallowed hard. "A coward." Mark chuckled darkly. "See, you're no better than me. Dash dash dash. The last choice." Emily turned to him. "You ruined my life. You took my past. And now you want to destroy what's left of my family." Mark smiled faintly. "Family is just another word for leverage." She took a step closer to him. "You were wrong about me, Mark. I remember everything." For the first time, his confidence faltered. "What do you mean?" "I remember the lake," she said, her voice trembling. "I remember that night. You came after me, after what you did to my mother. You said you'd never let me go." Mark's smirk disappeared. "That's not true." "It is," she whispered. "And I remember the sound when you fell." Lightning cracked across the sky. Mark's eyes widened as she reached into her pocket and threw something at his feet, his own old watch, rusted and bent. "You didn't disappear," Emily said. "You drowned. I pushed you in. You just wouldn't stay dead." Dash dash dash. The confession. Silence hung between us, broken only by the storm. Mark stared at the watch like he was seeing a ghost. Then, slowly, his lips curled into a broken smile. "So this is how it ends," he muttered. "With memories and lies." He stepped back toward the lake, water lapping at his boots. "You can't wash away what you've done, Emily. Or you, Jonathan. It's all written here." He pointed to his head. "In memory. In guilt." Then, before either of us could move, he stepped backward, into the water. "Mark!" Emily screamed, running toward him. But it was too late. The waves swallowed him whole. We stood there, helpless, as the lake went still again. After the storm. Hours later, the storm began to fade. The lake was calm, reflecting the faint orange glow of sunrise. Emily sat on the shore, shivering under my jacket, her eyes lost somewhere in the distance. "I didn't want any of this," she whispered. "I just wanted peace." I sat beside her. "You didn't do anything wrong." She looked at me, her eyes hollow. "Didn't I? I killed him." I shook my head. He was already dead inside long before that night. We sat in silence, listening to the soft ripples against the shore. For the first time in years, I felt like the lake wasn't hiding secrets anymore. It was letting them go. The box. Later that day, we went back to the house. Daniel was still asleep. He had no idea what had happened. Emily and I didn't speak much. In the kitchen, I found the small wooden box, E&M carved on top, lying on the table. I opened it slowly. Inside were the letters I had found before, but there was something new now. A folded note, written in Emily's handwriting. "Greater than, some truths drown quietly. Others rise to the surface when you least expect them. Thank you, for not letting me drown alone." Tears blurred my vision. A quiet goodbye. A week later, police divers recovered a few of Mark's belongings from the lake, his wallet, his ring, and his watch. But there was no body. They ruled it an accident. Emily didn't attend the inquiry. She stayed home, helping Daniel with his work, keeping busy, pretending everything was fine. But some nights, I'd find her sitting by the window, staring toward the lake, lost in thought. "Do you ever think he's still out there?" she asked me one night, her voice barely a whisper. I smiled sadly. "No, but the things he left behind, they'll always be part of us." She nodded slowly. "Then maybe that's how we heal. Not by forgetting, but by forgiving." Forgiveness. Months passed. The house felt lighter somehow. The nightmares faded. The lake became a place of peace again. One morning, Emily knocked on my study door. She looked brighter, calmer. In her hands was the same old wedding dress, the one from the first suitcase, now cleaned and folded. "I thought about burning it," she said softly. "But I decided to keep it instead." "As a reminder." "Of what?" I asked. "That even broken things can be mended." She smiled faintly. "You taught me that." I couldn't hold back the tears. For the first time, I didn't feel haunted by the past. I felt forgiven. Epilogue. The calm lake. That evening, I walked to the lake alone. The water shimmered in the golden sunset. I stood there for a long time, remembering everything, the lies, the guilt, the pain, and realizing that somehow, through it all, love had survived. A single ripple spread across the surface, as if the lake itself was breathing again, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel afraid to look at it. Because the lake no longer hid our secrets, it had finally set them free.